it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a fun little slightly nerdy treat for you. I have here the Star Trek The Original Series Tarot deck, which is an independently produced deck by, I think Telecade is the name of the company, and it is such a fun little treat. I want to go ahead and share the cards with you. Take a look at the guidebook. Here's the lovely box that it came in, super retro. I love it. So before we jump in, let's have a little bit of a nerd moment. Let's talk about Star Trek because I absolutely love Star Trek. It's one of my favorite fandoms. I have been watching Star Trek since I was a kid, since the original series, which I feel like my dad never missed an episode. I could be wrong, but I feel like it. And this was back in the day when there was basically one TV in the house, right? In the living room. Let me show my age. There was one TV in the house. It was in the living room and you watched whatever your parents watched. So I watched a lot of Star Trek growing up, the original series. Now, I was very young, so I don't really remember a lot of the episodes in detail. I have watched it on occasion from time to time as I've come into my adult years. Really, my love is in Star Trek The Next Generation. There is a deck by a different publishing company, but that's not really what we're here to talk about because that deck didn't really get it for me. So I saw a video, or actually I was talking to Marlena, and I'll leave a link to her video below as well, where the creator of this deck had actually reached out to her about checking out this deck after her review of the Star Trek The Next Generation Tarot. And she showed me a few pictures and I immediately then reached out to contact the creator, which is not something I really ever do, but I loved the thought and the intention that went into this deck that I saw. I poked around on the website for a while. And of course, the creator was happy to send me a deck. And now I'm finally able to take a moment to share it all with you. I love this. It says on the front of the guidebook, it says Card Trek from the Triumphi to the 23rd century. I love that. So this it calls the tutorial. It's also listed as a tutorial, I think, on the website, but really it's a guidebook. That's the language or the lingo that we all know. We will take a look at that here in a moment because there's a lot in this deck. First of all, can we just talk about the box? It's super cool. I love the emblem on it. It's a great little two-piece box. Really, it fits the cards nicely, and I just it's the emblem, right? So we're gonna nerd out here for a little bit, and I am gonna share with you this really cool Star Trek The Original Series tarot deck. I do believe there might be other decks in the work based on the Star Trek fandom. Now, I do want to note that the creator did let me know that this deck is actually licensed. To be perfectly honest, that's not something I see a lot with indie decks. When we have these fandom decks, most of the time they are unlicensed. And then there's a whole gray area there with copyright infringement and stuff, right? Okay, so that little spiel aside, here's the backs, which are pretty cool. There's this little cosmos pattern here. They are reversible, and as you can see, there's a border on the back and a very slight kind of hazy black border. Now, there is a lot going on in all of these cards, and we will take a peek in the guidebook and just see what the correspondences are, but I'm not gonna go through them on every card because as you can see, there's a ton. And generally, that's not my favorite on a tarot deck. However, because of this sort of nature of this deck, the fandom that it is in, it almost feels like a retro computer screen kind of bringing up the images or tapping into the energy of this card. And then we get all the information around it as well. We do have the deck title on the corner of all the cards, and that's definitely not my favorite. I do wish the title wasn't there, but it is cool that we have additional correspondences that we can pull into this deck. So if I remember correctly, there are 78 episodes of Star Trek The Original Series, and so every card relates to an episode. I probably do not have enough knowledge of those episodes to really dive into those and to really make those connections, but I do recognize a lot of the characters. And we do have the title of the episode that it comes from on the card itself. So let's go ahead and jump into the cards. So we have our Ace of Rods here with the Arena episode. I do remember these lizard people. We have the Two of Rods with What Are Little Girls Made Of? I do not remember that episode. I do wonder if they go in order. I didn't think to check that to see if the episodes actually went in order, but I think the episodes actually more relate to the energy of the tarot card, if I remember correctly. So we have our Three of Rods with our Errand of Mercy. And the thing that's really cool about this deck is that you could totally use the titles of the episodes as keywords as well. And I think that's really cool. Four of Rods with the Omega Glory. Five of Rods with the Savage Captain. Six of Rods with A Taste of Armageddon. This deck is so retro. It takes me right back to my childhood. We have the Seven of Rods with Operation Annihilate. The Eight of Rods with Wink of an Eye. The Nine of Rods with the Deadly Years. I feel like I do remember that one. The Ten of Rods with Spock's Brain. The illustrations in this deck are really quite beautiful. Then we have the Page of Rods with Charlie X. The Knight of Rods with the Changeling. The Queen of Rods with the Enterprise Incident. And the King of Rods with Space Seed. Then we move into our cups with the Ace, Where No Man Has Gone Before. The Two of Cups is the Enemy Within. The Three of Cups is Mud's Women. The Four of Cups is Danger of the Mind. The Five of Cups is Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. The Six of Cups is Plato's Stepchildren. The Seven of Cups is And the Child Shall Lead. The Eight is the Immunity Syndrome. The Nine is the Mark of Gideon. The 10 is Tomorrow is Yesterday. The Page is Miri. The Knight of Cups is the Ultimate Computer. The Queen of Cups is the Empath. Yes, that's perfect. That works. And the King of Cups is I, Mud. Moving into our blades, I remember seeing this image. This was one of, I think, the first images I ever saw of this deck. The Ace of Blades is the Naked Time, which is just funny. The Two of Blades is Whom Gods Destroy. The Three of Blades comes from That Which Survives. The Four is the Lights of Zatar. The Five is the Patterns of Force. The Six is the Alternative Factor. The Seven is the Man Trap. These cards make me giggle. I apologize. It's not funny, but it's funny to me. The Eight is the Wolf in the Fold. The Nine is Obsession. That's really interesting. The 10 is By Any Other Name. The Page is Shore Leave. The Knight is Squire of Gothos. The Queen is Elan of Troyes. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. The King is Day of the Dove. The Ace of Coins is All Our Yesterdays. I think that's a beautiful image. The Two is Turnabout Intruder. The Three of Coins is the Trickster of Triskelion. The Four of Coins is Mirror Mirror. The Five of Coins is the Carbonite Maneuver. The Six of Coins is Bread and Circuses. The Seven is the Grailed Seven. The Eight is Assignment Earth. The Nine of Cups is a piece of the action. I love that image. It's fantastic for the Nine of Coins. The 10 of Coins is the Trouble with Tribbles. Yes, I'm so glad to see this. I freaking love the Tribble episode. Like, I feel like that episode, we must have had it like on VHS or something because I've seen that episode countless times. Let me show my age. VHS, who remembers that? The Page of Coins, Amok Time. The Knight of Coins is Balance of Terror. The Queen of Coins is Journey to Babel. The King of Coins is The Conscience of the King. Then we move into our majors. So we have the Fool with The Way to Eden. The Magician with Cat Spa. The High Priestess with For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. That's cool. The Empress is Friday's Child. I remember that episode. The Emperor is Who mourns the Adonis? I think that's how it's pronounced. It's been a while. The Hierophant is the return of the Archons. The Lovers is the Paradise Syndrome. Kirk with one of his many lovers. The Chariot, yes, the Enterprise, I love that. The Thalalian Web, I might be pronouncing that wrong as well. Strength is a private little war. That's kind of a cool image for strength, I like that. The Hermit is Requiem for Methuselah. I probably slaughtered that. The Wheel of Fortune is the city on the edge of forever. I love this image for the Wheel of Fortune. I think that's really cool. The Justice. Justice is court-martial. Yes, that's perfect. The Hangman is this side of paradise. I love this card too. It's so great. Death is metamorphosis. Perfect. Temperance. There is no truth in beauty. I do think Spock does kind of embody temperance energy pretty well because he is half human, half Vulcan, right? And he really has that balance between the logical and the emotional, right? He strives to maintain that balance. We see him go into the logical a lot, but there is that sense of trying to strive for that balance there, which I think is really cool. The Devil is the devil in the dark. The Tower is the doomsday machine. I mean, perfect. The Star is Return to Tomorrow. That's a good image too. The Moon is the Menagerie. I feel like I remember that episode too. The Sun is the Cloudminders. Judgment is the Spectre of the Gun. The World is the Apple. So it looks like we have 2 alien cards here with From the Cage. So that's pretty cool. All right, that's kind of just like, it's fun, it's nostalgic. I'm gonna pull the extra cards aside. Like the artwork, I think is pretty cool. I mean, clearly this has been like, you know, it feels like it's been drawn by somebody. There's so much attention to detail. If you get really up close with these images, you can see all of the lovely detail in it. And like overall, I feel like even though I don't really remember a lot of these key moments, I don't remember a lot of these episodes, I do feel like it resonates with the energy of Star Trek, the original series, really well. It has a very retro vibe to it, which is really fitting for that particular series. And like I can tell that there's been a lot of intention and thought put into this deck, whereas some of the others that we might have seen, maybe not so much. Okay, so let's take a quick peek into the guidebook because like it's super interesting. There's a lot in here. I do have to say the text is a little small and it's a bit hard for me to read. So we do have a little bit about tarot origin. Now I haven't actually read this to know, you know, what the creator has written, but he does talk about the Mamluk cards, the Triumphi, and I love that we do have this kind of evolution that we see in the cards. Then we have the Catholic Church support where we saw kind of that that energy coming into the cards. We have the Solabusca, the Marseille, talking about tarot in its heyday, French tarots. It talks about Triumphi. Like this is a serious guidebook. There is thought that's been put in here. There is a lot of information about the history of tarot. We have the reinterpretations. Here's a bit about Attila and Gablin. We have Levi and the Golden Dawn. Rider-Waite Smith, of course. He talks about Crowley and the Thoth. This creator has done their homework, which is really fantastic. So we have some sample spreads, a 1-card spread, just drawing a 1 card. We have a 3-card past, present, and future. Some variations on the 3-card spread. We have some 5-card spread here. There's larger spreads. We have what he calls a warp spread, which is really cool. Which has past, present, future, then action, attitude, obstacles, and outcome. That's kind of neat. So kind of a spread associated with the deck. Then he talks about the tarot associations. I had to give the book a bend. The aliens. So here's a little bit about those 2 extra alien cards. Then we go into what he calls the unsuited cards. So these are the major arcana cards. And we do have about a page for each. It does talk about the tarot associations as well as the episode, which is really cool. So you can pull that association in. And we have the same for each of the minors as well, which is really nice. Also, it's color coded, which I appreciate. Like on the edge of the book, I think that's really cool. There is an appendix with all of that information in the back. So I'm going to pull out a card here because I do want to talk a little bit about the association on the card. We have the card number up here at the top, and then we also have the traditional sort of tarot association. Some of the suits, as you saw, have been renamed. So like we have blades for swords. So we also have here the most prominent centered text at the bottom is the episode title as it originally appeared on screen. At the bottom corner of each card are numbers representing additional episode reference data, so that must be down here. I will admit that's really hard for me to read. So we have the filmed order number is the order in which the episode which films, which differs slightly from the traditional production code number. So we have the episode number. So this one, I guess, is episode 20. It was the 20th episode filmed, I guess. The star date, if there was one given in the episode, is listed. So this one is star date. Oh, I can't read that. 3087.6, it looks like maybe. So then down here at the bottom one is the actual air date of the episode, and it is dated like a star date. So we have year, month, and date. So this would be, the year is 1967, the month would be March, and the date would be the 23rd. So March 23rd, 1967 was the air date for the alternative factor. Of course, we do have the title of the deck down at the bottom as well. So it does say that the Star Trek Tarot follows the Golden Dawn Astrological Association, which we do see on the card. That's up here in this corner. So like there's a whole Kabbalah layer over this deck as well, which is really, really interesting. Again, there's a ton of information in this deck and in this guidebook. I won't go into all of it here because then we'd be here for quite some time. So I just wanted to kind of take a moment. Let's go ahead now, because since we've had a little bit of a play with it, let's go ahead and give the deck a shuffle. The cardstock is really kind of like nice, traditional, like mass market feel. And I mean that in a really good way because I actually really like the cardstock of the majority of my mass market decks. It's those indie decks that sometimes I struggle with. So it shuffles beautifully. It smells good. It bridges, it riffles, it bridges. It just feels like a wonderful tarot deck. I think it would be really wonderful edged in like a black color to kind of blend in with that black spacey background. It overhands nicely. So let's go ahead and pull a couple cards and just see what they look like on the table. So we got the Emperor, the Page of Cups, and the Page of Rods. So I think one of the things that's really cool about a deck like this is that we do have that fandom layer, right? Like if you love Star Trek and you want to immerse yourself in that world, you can definitely do that with this deck. This definitely gives me retro Star Trek vibes. And even though I don't particularly remember every single episode, like I've probably seen them all at one point or another, I don't necessarily remember them all in detail. I still feel like this is a deck that I could very much work with and read with. It has this beautiful kind of retro sci-fi vibe to it that like I actually really love. Like y'all know I'm a huge nerd. I actually really love sci-fi stuff. And a deck like this really helps me to really allows me to tap into that, which is really great. But I don't feel like you need to have a really specific knowledge of these episodes or these cards. Like any seasoned tarot reader could take this deck and just read with it the way it is. So we've got that Emperor, the Page of Cups, and the Page of Rods. I love the illustrations and the images. It gives me that like almost taking me back to my childhood energy. And it definitely feels much more intentional than some of the other Star Trek decks that I've seen out there and that I do have. Let's just for fun, let's see what I have to pair it with. Because you know I like to do my pairings. Okay, you know I had to break out the Mystic Martian Oracle because like we're in the Star Trek land, so we're in the land of crazy Martians. And I feel like these two decks together, I mean, they're just going to be perfect. So I'm going to tie into that tarot association, like pretending that I don't really know a ton about the Star Trek universe, in which I really don't about the original series. Again, like I said, I'm much more familiar with the Next Generation and all the series that came after, clear up until the newest one, which is Strange New Worlds, I do believe. So I'm going to just look at these in terms of the energy, the artwork, and allowing a little bit of that Star Trek energy to just infuse what I'm looking at here. And with the Mystic Martian, like I don't have to know these alien creatures either. I can just tie into these keywords. So we have foresight, planning, and strategy between the Three of Cups and the Nine of Cups. I do feel like the colors, like besides the whole alien vibe, which I think goes together really, really well, I think the colors and the artwork are actually quite compatible with these two. Like, how cool is that? They're both very cosmic. There's definitely a retro vibe to the Mystic Martian as well, which I think is really cool. And I think it's going to pair really well with this deck. This definitely, I think, gives me that sort of nerdy sci-fi edge to my readings that I do actually really love. And I feel like that's really, really lacking in the world and in my personal collection. So I'm really excited to actually have a deck that taps into that even more. I am working on my own sort of sci-fi style decks as well. So clearly that is definitely an energy that I really resonate with. But these two decks together, this is pretty cool. Fire element, warrior, passion, fearlessness. And then we have Spock over here with the 10 of rods. And then we have the 7 of coins with all of the characters. Like, I think they actually work together really, really well. I love we get kind of those crazy aliens that I do remember seeing in the original Star Trek, right? And I mean, again, crazy aliens like in the best possible way, because like I really actually love the Mystic Martian oracles. It's kind of like a favorite of mine, and I really am enjoying working with it. And I'm really gonna enjoy playing with it with the Star Trek tarot, I think, because I feel like these two actually go really, really well together. Very cool. Let's just do one more with this one. I mean, yeah, this character feels like it could totally be from Star Trek. So sticking with that sort of cosmic-y space vibe, I actually have, this is my combined Blue Messiah and Cosmic reading cards that you can see here's the two different backs. I've actually trimmed and combined mine down into one deck, and so we're just going to show it as it is because this is definitely the way that I work with it. But I felt like tapping into this cosmic spacey energy would be the perfect combination to bring a little bit more of a seriousness to working with the Star Trek tarot, right? The Mystic Martian felt very fun and like kind of stepping back into that childhood sense and that fun kind of retro nostalgia vibe for the two decks, putting them together. But I feel like this combined Blue Messiah Crystal Cosmic reading cards adds a layer of weight to this and kind of actually makes it feel like less of a novelty experience and more of a serious tarot reading. Like I feel like I could do a really serious reading with these two decks together, using my combined oracle here as really that focus point, and then letting the Star Trek tarot kind of expand upon it. And that's one of the things about this deck that I think that's really cool, the Star Trek tarot, is that like you have the fandom there if you want it, but you can also use it just to pull in that energy of sort of that retro sci-fi feel. But I think if you pair it with different oracle decks, as we often see when we pair tarot and oracle together, like it can actually influence the energy of the deck and it can bring out more things, right? We might look at the Star Trek tarot and go, this is just a novelty deck. But it does, I think, actually function really well as a tarot, and by pairing it with something that feels less novelty and more connected into personal work that I do, it gives a bit more of a serious energy and a bit more weight and importance to the tarot deck itself. It's kind of showing me that this deck has the ability to be fun, to tap into that sort of novelty, retro energy that we saw come through when I paired it with the Mystic Martian. But when I pair it with something that I do use for serious work, a deck that I use to connect with that sort of cosmic energy, that sense of something greater than myself, it brings a sense of seriousness to the Star Trek tarot as well. It feels less novelty now. So I think it's always really cool when we pull decks together like this, how they can sort of interplay with each other and almost change the energy, change the tone of the readings that we get. And I think this is really cool. And one of the reasons why I definitely like to pair my tarot and oracle together, because it allows me to play with those sort of connections. So speaking of that kind of more serious work, I pulled out the Earth Magic Oracle cards, which has a totally different energy than the Star Trek Tarot. But what I thought might be really interesting with this pairing, and that's quite large, so I'm going to kind of split that down, is that this pairing would create that as above, so below kind of energy, where we have the Star Trek Tarot, which is out in the cosmos, right? It's out beyond us, beyond what we currently can experience in our everyday lives. And the Earth Magic Oracle is tied in very much to the earth, the space that we exist in now. And I thought these might be really interesting to pair together, and adding that kind of opposite energy, that balancing, almost that temperance energy, because we have this kind of far-flung out into the cosmos energy with the Star Trek Tarot, and then bringing it down into the real world. Like, how can we take this energy and bring it down into the real world? I also thought that the artwork might be pretty compatible. The Earth Magic Oracle is a bit of an older oracle, and it has a little bit of a kind of retro oracle feel that I felt like would work really well with this. Also, the colors are just super compatible. So I think this is definitely a really cool pairing. And again, one that takes it out of that novelty realm and brings it into the realm of what can we really experience. This is interesting here, ancestors, right? If you've ever, there's like this whole theory about like the ancient alien theory, right? And that there were other creatures or peoples that populated the planet or the earth that have been here before us, like in our long past, in our ancestral line. So this is really cool, like to look at that and kind of just play with that idea of where is that ancestral energy coming in. And this, again, we're pulling in that sort of retro energy. So that looking at ancestors as generations and maybe exploring other ideas beyond what we've been taught, right? The high priestess, she stands at the gateway and she offers knowledge that we don't normally have access to. So I think that's really cool. So that was a look at the Star Trek, the original series tarot. I really do feel like, although there's a lot going on in the cards, and I'm kind of hoping that maybe we take a little bit of step back from that if we have other cards from this creator. Like as a tarot reader, this is a bit overwhelming. I also don't think we need the name of the deck on there. I would like to see just the tarot associations and the episode. If they do relate to an episode, I do think that's really cool. I mean, the date's pretty cool. Knowing what the star date is and the actual air date is also pretty interesting, but I think that's something that could be in the guidebook and not necessarily on the cards themselves. But I love the intention that has gone into this deck. I hope that this deck creates other decks in this fandom, because I feel like this is a deck that's been done really well. It's been done with intention. It's been done by somebody who clearly has a really good understanding of the Star Trek world and has been able to really tie those things in together into the tarot. I think that a lot of people might see this as a novelty deck and just kind of dismiss it as that. And while I have definitely seen, and there are novelty decks out there in this fandom, I would not classify this as one. This to me feels like a real working tarot deck. It is a deck that I could see myself using. It has that wonderful retro sci-fi energy to it that I do actually really, really love. And you saw me pair it with different oracle decks. I can kind of change that energy and adjust it to the readings that I'm doing. If I want to just have some fun and play with it as a novelty deck, I can take something like the Mystic Martian and pull it in, have a lot of fun with it. I mean, I could work with it on its own as well as just having a lot of fun with it, but I can also pair it with some other oracle decks to really bring that weight in, and to allow this deck to step out in its own sense and to show that it can be a serious tarot deck as well. Because I think that a lot of times we see decks like these and we think, oh, novelty decks, because we see a lot of those decks come out where we're looking at specific fandoms. And I do love that this deck is, is official, it's licensed. I think it's really well thought out. It's really well executed. I mean, I have a few little quibbles with just all the stuff that's on the card, all the text, because that can be a bit distracting. I feel like that should be in the guidebook. I love that we have access to it, but I feel like it should be there. And we should just have these fantastic, iconic images, because that, I think, more than anything, more than even the tarot associations, is sometimes what we connect to, particularly when we're talking about fandom decks. I'm really excited to actually be able to share this one with you and to be able to work with it myself. It's definitely a deck that I am planning on working with, and I'm looking forward to exploring more, both in play, but also in serious work. As I mentioned, I feel like decks that tap into that sort of sci-fi energy are really missing, and that's something that I'm, working on myself and hoping to address at some point. In the meantime, I love seeing these fandom decks, and I love seeing fandom decks that have done by, I feel like, somebody who really understands the fandom, and it's not, for lack of a better word, a cash grab, right? So I was really excited to share this deck with you, to get the word out about it. I feel like it's a serious tarot deck, but I feel like it also really honors the fandom in which it's come from, and it does a really wonderful job of balancing both of those aspects. I want to thank the creator for sending me this deck to share with you today. I will leave links for everything I've shown here in the description box below for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.